All right. How is everybody doing? We excited? We got demo time here. So I'm not going to lie. One of the challenges of running demo time is finding brave souls willing to come up and show what they're up to. So if you've got anybody that's out there doing something, they're like, man, I would really love to have a microphone and a projector and an audience, send them my way. Let them know. So today we have two excellent presentations, and we'll maybe have another one. I just don't have that confirmed, so maybe we're not going to say that one isn't going to be excellent as well if it doesn't happen. But first off, we have Jacob. Jacob is going to talk to us about something I'm a huge fan of, which is an unrestricted internet. I believe the internet is the best internet is independent internet. And then after that, we're going to hear from Sunny, who, raise your hand if you recall, about a month ago, OpenAI released one of their models. They open source one. Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, there's one or two. Yeah. It's a real stupid nerd thing. But Sunny has taken the lead on actually showing us what that looks like if you try to deploy it on your own. So for those that, I'll do some more of an intro for him on that when we transition over there. One piece of housekeeping. So what to expect? Jacob's going to give a presentation. I'm assuming is great. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. So he seems sharp. I like him. He seems like I feel good about this. Then there's going to be Q&A, and I know what you're going to think. You're like, wow, I'm stage here. Or I'm in the audience. It seems so close. I'm just going to say it so we can hear it. It's true, we can hear it. However, these get recorded, and no one will hear your wonderful question unless you have this mic, which I'll bring over to you. So at Q&A time, if I seem like I'm being a little pedantic, it's because I am being pedantic, or difficult, however we want to put it, particular. There we go. And then, yeah. So one last thing before we get going. It's not an easy thing to come up and present. We try to have a nice open mic environment, so if anybody's working on anything in the community, they can come up and feel supported, even if sometimes there's technical challenges or maybe the presentation was, but we love them anyway. So without any further ado, big round of applause because we support them. We've got Jacob here with Vegas Open. Yes. See, that's the friendliness.
Thank you. Well, hello. My name's Jacob, and I'm the program director for Vegas Open Network. I'm sure all of you use the internet on a day-to-day basis. We use it every day for taxes. We use it to apply for jobs. I don't know of any jobs now that let you go in and apply for jobs anymore. That's just not existent. So having an internet connection is the difference between being able to be part of society and not. And a lot of that is roadblocked by very expensive internet plans, and then the plans that they give out for free have very low income maximums to where the people that might be at a living wage but are still broke, living paycheck to paycheck, will not be able to qualify for it. So then what happens is that they're stuck having to go to a library. They're stuck having to use their neighbor's Wi-Fi, maybe not legally, and it becomes a more stressful situation to where I thought, well, maybe we need to start looking at this as a solution rather than depending upon these billion-dollar government grants that seem to not be getting anywhere for like last mile and also connecting the unconnected. So, as I was saying, we use internet for day-to-day activities. We use it to learn. We use it to educate people in schools with Chromebooks. It's used on a day-to-day activity. The problem a lot with ISPs nowadays is that they're also taking your data and they're selling it to third parties that you don't generally know who sells it. But then also when you try to give them a call, they're usually not local, they're outsourced. And when you try to get something specialized, let's say you have a specialized product, maybe it's very like a unique AI solution that requires like a very specialized network. It's very difficult to find somebody at a local ISP that understands the nuances of all the core infrastructure. So the solution that I thought of, and it's not the first time, by the way, that this type of solution has not been thought of, is creating an ISP that is $0 per month. Ran off donations, is nonprofit. Actually, we just received our 501c3 designation last week, and we're partnered with the Raft Foundation in New York, who knows a current, already established community network called NYC Mesh. They have roughly about 4,000 members, and so the benefits of partnering with the Raft Foundation is that now we have a connection with people that have already established a community network. But then the best part about this setup is that it's going to be a network that's owned by the community, not by one person. While I'm starting up the organization, at some point it gets switched over to an advisory council that would then take the overall management of the organization, and then as a collective and as a community resource, the ISP would then continue on to be able to connect the unconnected, but also giving startup businesses, maybe businesses that you're starting up yourself, an upper hand by taking that one extra item out of the expense sheet. The vision that we have is connected Las Vegas, where everybody has the power to access, build, and shape the internet. And this is very, very important as a public resource. And as a public resource, this means that in terms of a nonprofit making a change difference, like you look at normally nonprofits going out feeding the homeless, going out giving people housing, the internet is something that goes across the board in terms of income. So you could be low income, medium income, or high income, be a multi-million-dollar executive, but you're still gonna need an internet connection. And with this network, it does provide an extra layer of privacy because it's going to be transparent. And that's where we go into kind of like the values of what this is. So the values of Vegas Open Network will be openness and transparency. What does that mean? That means that all of our finances are going to be open through Open Collective. Whenever somebody donates, it's shown as a open entry item. Whenever there's an expense, for example, if I want to go buy a router, that's all going to be public knowledge. It's not anything hidden, anything behind any sort of firewalls. It's open to everybody. And another element in terms of with transparency is there's something called the Network Commons license, and I'll go into that on a different slide, but there's also the right for you to know how the network is built. And that's important because if you go and ask your ISP right now, hey, what's the back end of your network? What are you guys doing with my data? They're gonna look at you and they're gonna be like, we're not gonna tell you that. That's like a core component business model element. But the cool thing with the Vegas Open Network is that if you wanted to go look at the switches and the routers and actually go into all the openness and all the settings and everything, it's all gonna be public knowledge. Right now we have a GitHub repo that is being assembled that has all of the backend configurations and all of the backend website. You can go on there, you can do a branch and then do what's called a pull request and even submit code yourself. It's all open, community owned, there's no one owner, and you can even take it for yourself and you can go build your own network. So if you maybe live in Pahrump, if you have property over there, you can go build your own network. No one's gonna be mad about it. Actually, it's gonna be encouraged. Fair access for all means that everybody has the ability to access, but part of the conditions is that in establishing a connection, you agree to also expand the network. This network will be done through wireless mesh technology, basically point-to-points, point to multi-points, and I'll show you some pictures of the equipment that we're using. And so if you establish it in your neighborhood, and let's say your neighbor down the street wants access too, then they're more than welcome to have access to the fair access policy. Community over profit says for itself that there is no profit element involved. Running a 501c3, there's a lot of legal work involved. Our physical sponsor, the Raft Foundation, they have legal counsel, they have accounting, and they also have HR administration. All of that is done through a third party that is not known by anyone in the organization or potentially known by anyone in Vegas, which is great because it creates another level of transparency and security for the financial well-being and also the trust by the public, being that there would be somebody that's unrelated to the project whatsoever that is involved in some of the decision making. And then shared ownership and responsibility. Again, if you want to go expand the network in your neighborhood, you have the right to do so through like an antenna on your roof, pointing it down to your neighbor down the street. That's totally within your right. So the network commons license, this is used by a lot of open community networks right now, like NYC Mesh in New York. There's 4 kind of pillars to what the network commons license is. That is a core model of how the network will be established. It's free to use, always will be free to use. Donations are what makes the network work. So if you want to donate $25 per month, you can do that. But if you can't afford it, or if you just don't want to donate at all, you're still able to connect to the internet, still able to get connected, and that's well within the network commons. Free to know. You come to me or you come to any volunteer that works on the back-end core net infrastructure, more than welcome to see how the network works and learn how it works. With this project, you're not required to understand networking. You don't have to understand technology. Actually, once you look at how ISPs work, it's pretty simple once you look at the core concepts of how core infrastructure works across the board. Free to offer and accept services. So we're not going to be restricting anybody from selling services on the network. You could run your business on the network. You could sell technology services, as in you can maybe go help some business set up networks. The only thing, which is the first item, is it's free to use. So the only thing that you really can't do is go and resell the internet. That's going to be a big no-no. That's like one way to get kicked off the network very quickly. And then agree to extend the network. So if you connect into the network, you get like a wireless point-to-point on top of your roof. You also agree to extend it to your neighbors. Usually that's within like a few hundred feet. So this isn't something new. It's already been done before. New York, NYC Mesh is one of the ones that we're mirroring the most. There's other places in Germany that have 10,000 nodes. Their node count is about 4,000, which is every one of those red dots. Those blue dots are what's called a hub. So the hubs are connecting into the nodes. Each and every one of those red dots is also potentially connecting 20 people plus into the network. So you don't necessarily need to have equipment on your rooftop. It can just be that you're connecting to your neighbor's connection also. And then the big blue dots are what are called supernodes. So those are on top of like high points of presence where there's data centers, and also where we would aggregate our traffic into an internet exchange point, which one of the other components of our network is we're working to decentralize data from going outside of the state and combining it into an internet exchange point to where other ISPs can peer into our network, or other service providers like maybe a small business, and have access to a lot more resources at barely any cost because it's all donation based, and still be competitive to the greater market. So this is kind of like a top-down overview of what our network looks like, or what it's going to look like. The central office is set up to where we'll have what's called a data plane. It's basically where all the other ISPs interconnect into our network. We'll be peering with Hurricane Electric at the start, just to get our peering arrangements done quickly. And that's because most ISPs require a minimum amount of traffic before they peer with you, and they also have to have a reason to peer with you because maybe our traffic goes to their network. So they're not just willing to give us peers right off the bat. But we'll have Internet Exchange Point data plane to where if you want to come in with your own business and get your own IPs that you own yourself, you have that perfect right to do so. And we'll also have co-location capabilities to where if you want to host servers and any of our racks, that will be available. From the data plane, that would then go down into our core switch to where we'll have a lot of our infrastructure. We'll be hosting our own DNS root zone that would allow us to basically give the fastest response for when you type in an address in the browser and get a response compared to other ISPs. If you go through any of the large corporations, you're usually having to go out to a DNS server that's potentially in a completely different state than Las Vegas. The supernode at the bottom there that goes out to the point, what's called a PTMP, point to multi-point, that pink line, that goes off into other nodes. But before we get to that, for some reason that's on the next slide, part of the back-end core network is that the plan is to set up aggregation switches and other data centers across Las Vegas. What that means is that people with services that need to cross over to another data center can easily do so through our back-end aggregation network. In terms of speeds, I'm currently in discussions with a few dark fiber providers. We're looking at data speeds of about 100 gigabits per second between data centers. There are some fiber loops and some other dark fiber networks that are being established that would enhance this speed potentially. But our total aggregation throughput is expected to be about 1 terabit per second on our core switches, with 100 gigabits per second for aggregation switches back into our core internet exchange point. And so from a technical aspect, from an end user, that may not be important, but from a business that's trying to establish itself and do it inexpensively, or someone that's trying to keep data locally, and there's that point of trying to keep our data local in Las Vegas rather than traveling over to California or Seattle, is having this capability. And Las Vegas doesn't really do a good job. We have Vegas IX, but they have a fee structure established to it. Our internet exchange would be run completely by donations, and it'd be free to connect. So this is kind of like what the distribution would look like from the beginning. It goes off to a point-to-point, and then that would then go into a hub with a Wi-Fi access point. Each and every component of the network would have a Wi-Fi access point to allow other people around it to connect into the network. So you don't necessarily, again, need to purchase equipment to connect. You can just set up your laptop somewhere and connect into the network freely. From there, it would then be distributed out to nodes. This could be other people's roofs. And they would also have Wi-Fi, multiple layers of Wi-Fi on it. This is kind of a more complex example that then establishes the mesh methodology. So the routing protocols that we're primarily going to be using is BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. That's more of just like a core point-to-point routing. So it's, if I'm trying to get data from point A to point B, that's what we're trying to get done. But then with this mesh technology, we're going to be using OSPF, open shortest path first, which then gives us the ability to where if a node, your neighbor, decides they don't like people and they want to turn off your internet, well, it's just going to be routed through somebody else's node anyways, automatically. So this prevents a lot of retaliation attacks to where at least we'd have more sustainability for the network. This is what kind of network or equipment that we're going to be using. Not using Cisco, I'm sorry, because they're very expensive. Microtech, FS, and Ubiquity are some of the leading providers for equipment for community networks. The antennas would basically be a really small, basically the size of my laptop screen on top of your rooftop, if you put one on top of your house. We'll have the capability of being able to go into multifamily homes, so large apartment complexes. We'll be able to do distribution over their existing copper network to be able to then give apartments and condos access to the same network through one antenna instead of everybody putting one on their balconies, which most HOAs in Las Vegas really hate that. User security, that's one that comes up when I've been asking around to users is, how secure is this going to be? And so we'll be utilizing Tor nodes, and so we'll be establishing more Tor nodes and also offering VPN access. Internet exchange point, we already went over. We'll be providing a DNS route, but the cool thing with that is that we'll have a .vonet TLD internal into the network. So if you want to build a service internal to Las Vegas, you can do that, and it's only available on the network itself. Co-location hosting, we'll be using OpenStack, which is free and open source. Our roadmap, phase 1, is we're setting up the IXP setup, establishing volunteers, fundraising, and doing development. In phase 2, we're going to establish 2 neighborhoods, or 1 to 2, and specifically try to get established in the arts district here. Phase 3, we'll look at expansion and also provide training for volunteers. We just recently got 501c3, working on documentation. We're having discussions with dark fiber providers, a lot of fundraising, a lot of outreach. Our GitHub development, I'll just go through this quickly. We do have a GitHub repository of everything that's developed. One of the biggest things is a mobile app for volunteers and installers. This will be where both you as users can go and see the status of the network, but also request installation, and it will pull your location and then determine the right line of sight calculations based on some height data on maps. All of our data will be stored in VONET data. This is a custom thing I built in .NET Core with Razor pages and Entity Framework. It's basically the collective location for all data related to Vegas Open Network. It will manage all the volunteer schedules for installations, all the equipment information, all the customer relations management, and some various other features. VONET status is a custom-built status dashboard that I'm developing that will interconnect into all the routers and the switches that will show uptime data and also be able to deploy incident information to end users. The reason why I made it custom is because there seems to not be a status dashboard for .NET Core, and I'm a Microsoft guy by heart, and I'm not a really big fan of PHP, so I just built one myself. The future, establishing stronger peering agreements that lowers their cost of operation. I want the organization to become a telecom franchise. What does that mean? That means we'll have access to right-of-ways, so we could push out our own fiber and get access to conduit on public right-of-ways. So that means we could potentially establish fiber hoods ourselves, kind of like what Google is doing. So we'd be kind of a competitor to Google in a way. How you can help? You can donate. So whether it's donating $25 per month, which is all tax deductible, all of that helps establish this network. You don't have to donate, but of course things still cost money even as a nonprofit. But important, it's whether you donate $25 or $1, it's all tax deductible, depending upon how you do your taxes. Become part of the collective. So volunteering to become a host. Giving up part of your rooftop to have a node. Volunteer skills. You don't have to have networking skills, but I'm going to need installers, people to work on the infrastructure, individuals to go do public outreach. I'm really appreciative to be able to talk to everybody here about this. So at least we're getting some kind of traction. We have a very, very big wiki. So basically anything you want to know about how an ISP works, what the plan is, it's all there. Nevada requires a ton of different policies, so it's all available. Also, I have a nonprofit business plan document. It's about 20 pages. I know people might not be interested in a business plan, but I made one just because I like business plans, and it's very dynamic. So as things change, that document will change. you can go to vonet.org, vonet.org, and everything's there. You can probably browse there for hours, but thank you.
All right, big round of applause. All right, so I have some questions for you here.
Yes.
What of all of the things in the world we can do, what made you decide this is the cause you're going to run at?
It was complex. And it was something, so I almost see this as potentially being the largest nonprofit in Las Vegas. Out of all the things that we have going on for nonprofits in Vegas, I think internet is the biggest thing. I almost see Las Vegas as being the next Silicon Valley in a way. You kind of see that in the news. And what we need is a ISP that believes in supporting people establishing new businesses, because that's extremely important in diversifying away from casinos and resorts. But I've always wanted to create an internet service provider just because of the challenge behind it. I'm also kind of like a networking nerd.
I couldn't tell.
So this type of stuff is really fun, and I already have a job. So this is all like volunteer, extra time, kind of a fun thing to do.
All right, we got any questions about this lovely internet provider? Okay, I'm head up.
All right, so a real quick question. Are you going to have different tiers, like data plan tiers for business, for individuals?
Nope.
How are you going to stop abuse if somebody's just running a minor?
So there's no monitoring of the network, but anyone that does abuse the network, and that's all in the wiki documentation in terms of people who abuse the network, at that point, we would then perform an investigation on the network to determine what user is causing that, and then they would be removed from the network. There is potential that there are people that abuse the network for illegal reasons, and then we get a nice document from the courts requiring us to give up information. At that point, we would have to provide information about that user and deal with them like any ISP. But for the most part, ISPs are protected somewhat. For bandwidth considerations, based on how other community networks have set it up, it's basically based on a percentage model. So you assume that 20% of your active users are going to use your active bandwidth. We're going to have like a back end of about 100 gigabits per second with like an initial transport link of 10 gigabits per second. So if you put like 400, 500 users, like a 20% metric, it still balances out. We're aiming for 20 megabits per second, at least minimum, but you should expect about 100 megabits per second. That's not symmetrical though, because your upload may be a little bit slower just because of how wireless works.
All right, round of applause, round of applause. Next up, we have Sunny.
Hey, wait, how do we contact you?
How do they contact you?
Vonet.org.
VONET.org.
I'll give you my card too.
.net.
Jacob. I'll give you my card here in a second.
One of the things I love about Las Vegas is how we all kind of know each other. So he's really easy to connect with. All right, so raise your hand if you've heard of OpenAI. Okay, that's just a little question to see if we're all still awake after lunch. So one of the things that was really interesting relatively recently is that OpenAI, of course, they've raised a ton of money. Raise your hand if you remember DeepSeek getting dropped. Okay, so for those that don't know, DeepSeek was a model that got released. There's a funny little backstory on this. So OpenAI was open for open source is what they said, but then they weren't. And then DeepSeek allegedly took some of the information or the model and released it and open sourced what was supposed to be open source. So all that to say, now OpenAI itself has actually open sourced some of their models, and then what Sunny's going to do is demo for us what that looks like. So I don't know how much. Oh boy, that looks like my desktop.
Like, how do I mirror this?
Carefully. I don't. There's someone that used to know how to do the Mac thing, and that was Josh Copeland. And he's not here. You have a different Josh, I'm sad to say.
What is this?
All right, he's still figuring that one out. That's not true.
There's like 5.
He says there's too many Joshes. That's not a nice thing to say. There's a Josh back there. He's a nice Josh. There's Joshes out there. They're not too many Joshes. There's too many Jacobs. Now what?
Is there any Jacobs in
Any well, not in here. They're all out there, Jacobing about.
Is that it? I think that's it.
Oh,
There's a number?
we need an airplay? I don't. Hey, this looks like it's working.
Okay, cool.
How many nerds does it take? Let's clap for Sonny. All right.
Thank you. So a little bit about my background. I'm a full stack developer, but a little bit beyond that. I guess you could say I'm a one-man app agency. I do front end, back end, iOS and Android, so I kind of done it all. And then ChatGPT open source August 5th, 2 models, a 20 billion parameter and 120 billion parameter. And I was able to get them working and running. It's very expensive to run on servers, but I said I'm going to pay for it anyways. And it's been really exciting. It's actually a little bit faster than the ChatGPT or Grok APIs. I tried to use those first. But and it's just been really exciting. I really believe that these models being open source is going to be as influential as the open source software of the first web server. You know, I think it's really that exciting. And I still think there's a lot to do. So I think there's going to be, there's a lot that's going to happen, but I'm just going to show 2 demos on a back end and front end basis that I think there'll be an AI layer added to every app. So in the 80s and 90s, they added the GUI, you know, the UI, right? So now application developers didn't just do the code, but they had to add a UI layer. Now, in my opinion, all applications will have an AI layer on top of it, and it'll be a speaking form, you know, because even though you may have a nice UI developer, or UI designer, we all have so many apps in our pockets, and we have to use our brains to remember the menu system and all the screens. You know, I have to build dashboards, and boy, that's just a lot of work. And I think we're going to have what I like call generative UI, you know, and I think that's going to, you know, really change everything. So, all right, so here's I got a front end and back end demo. This is a back end demo. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you're like an accountant on the back end, and you have about 500 transactions in the last 3 months, and you sold some products, you sold them at a city and state, you made some profit, you know, you had a cost, and now instead of me having to build like 20 different screens, I can just generate these reports on the fly. So let me just show an example. So you can see the metric there, the group, and I can say something like, show me revenue by products last month. And I'm also using AI for the audio transcription.
Is that the whisper model?
Yes. And so you can see that. I can even add sort. Show me profit by customers this month sorted high to low. The audio transcription taking a second. Don't know how good the Wi-Fi is here. Let me look at that. No, we're good. It just and there you go. So if you do any reporting, you can grab a metric, and this is an aggregate. So this is actual reporting. If you want to know, hey, how much did I sell in pens last month? It'll just generate it, and eventually you'll be able to save these as well. So Josh, why don't you pick a metric, revenue, profit, or tax?
Tax, which should be 0.
And then Jacob, why don't you pick a group, products, customers, cities, state? Cities. Okay. Show me tax by cities this month. And there you go. And so it dynamically reports. So the other one that I'm really excited about is the automated sales assistant. So and for this demo, I think every startup's going to have this. You saw it here first. They may not use my app, but I think every app will have this on landing page. So when you go to a landing page, you're making a decision, right? So text is only good for like simple things. I'm on the way, I'll be there. But when you have more data, you need to have a voice conversation, preferably if you can look them in the face. And so everybody has a startup landing page, and you're trying to figure out, you know, does this product work for me? What does it really do? You know, there's all these open-ended questions, and some questions rely on the response that you get. So in this one, I just did a simple demo of an app that we all know called Zoom. Josh, pick a number 1 through 5.
3.
Okay. Tell me 3 features about Zoom.
Zoom meetings deliver HD video, audio, and screen sharing for up to 1,000 participants in a single call. Breakout rooms let the host instantly split attendees into separate discussion groups for focused collaboration. The AI companion provides real-time assistance, summarizing chats, generating notes, and offering smart prompts during meetings.
Jacob, pick one of those 3 features.
Chats.
The first one?
Yeah.
Tell me more about Zoom meetings.
Zoom meetings provide high-definition video and audio for up to 1,000 participants, with seamless screen sharing, virtual backgrounds, and real-time captions. Hosts can secure sessions with waiting rooms, passwords, and end-to-end encryption, while also enabling recording and AI companion assistance during the call.
Jacob, pick an industry. Or should I just say your industry?
Legal.
Legal. Okay, legal. Now, to prove that this is conversational, I'm going to ask a question referencing Zoom meetings without saying the word Zoom meetings, so it has, actual reference context like you would when you talk to a human being. Legal. Okay. Wow, that's really neat. Can you tell me how this might benefit me if I have a legal business?
Zoom meetings let you hold confidential client consultations with end-to-end encryption and waiting rooms to control access. Securely record sessions for accurate transcripts and evidence while using admin and compliance tools to manage retention policies. All features are designed to keep legal communications private, organized, and auditable.
So I want you to imagine that everything you do, you order a toaster from IKEA or whatever, and you have a question about something. You can now ask questions and get a response and get a voice response, so it's a lot easier to remember. So that's just a quick demo of doing Zoom front end and back end, but I'm going to have more, and I'm going to be probably launching some type of agency app where people can help their startups with these automated assistant and tutorials. So, yeah.
All right, Sonny. Round of applause for Sonny putting this together. All right, so I have a few questions.
Sure.
Question 1. So on the voice to text, speech to text,
Yeah.
are you running that locally in the browser, or is that going up somewhere?
No, it's going up. When you do the local one, the open source web, it just isn't that great. So I use Whisper to transcribe, and then I use 11 Labs right now to convert the text to speech. So this is 3 AI models working together, so to speak. But I'll eventually run the text to speech on my own server. So.
All right, now I have questions for the audience. Raise your hand if you've ever made something like this. All right, there's not a lot of hands raised. Raise your hand if you think this is pretty neat, that we're seeing stuff like this built right here in Las Vegas, right? Like, and I was having a chat with someone earlier. The most wild thing for me about where we're at in technology right now isn't just where the technology is right now, but like I started playing with computers like late 80s, early 90s, and the whole premise of what you can do now, like these tools are relatively new, and we're using these tools to build better tools, and we'll use those tools to build better tools. I mean, let me ask you this. So how long have you been doing development work?
I've been doing software development for over like 15 years. I worked at a company you probably all heard of. My first job was at MySpace. So,
Say hi to Tom.
I do. I have a picture with him.
Nice.
I've talked about. He's not close friends, but when I worked there, I knew who he was. You know what I mean? Like,
So how has sort of your toolkit changed over the last
Great question.
just
So
5 years?
And this is almost like ego deflating. Like I've been programming for over 15, maybe even 18 years at this point. And basically what I can do with AI is dwarfing anything I've done before. So it's kind of like, but at the same time, it's actually good because I have product knowledge. So that was another comment I was going to say. So there's companies like High Level and other things. They have these agents, but they're not really agents. They're automators because they don't know nothing about your particular product. So if you have two businesses and they have an automated voice agent, they'll take your phone and name and number, but they don't say anything. They don't ask. So in this, this took me like 5 minutes with the right prompt and script and to configure it because I know what I'm doing. So you can imagine that, if I you have a business, it takes 5-10 minutes to download the business intelligence. Now all the AI agents have a reference and scope of what they're doing. They know how to auto reply. You know what I mean? And so I think that's going to be the real next step. And I haven't seen anybody else do that yet, but that's what I'm going to be doing.
So I do a lot of product development, so I'm going to be a little self-indulgent here.
Yeah.
So Sonny laid out the proposition that moving forward, he thinks people will be talking to websites, asking stuff versus typing in and on chatbots and stuff. So I'm going to test that theory here.
Sure.
So raise your hand if you would rather not talk to a website and just click or whatever else to find your stuff. Okay, all right. Now, what if you'd rather talk to it? Some people just don't want to go to the website at all. All right.
Yeah. Well, one comment on that. So there's a lot of enterprise software that are big and complicated. So that's what I'm saying. We're limited by the UI because that's how much we can download in our brain. So the future apps will have way more screens, but we won't need to use it because we can talk with it. It'll just be at a higher level, just kind of how the UI got more mass adopted. So it's not really going to replace what you see now. You're just going to have access to much more complicated integration. One example is you go to the doctor's office, you got to fill out a bunch of forms. Eventually we'll all have our agents and we'll just sync up and ask a couple follow-up questions and that'll be it. So
that's all right. What questions do we have for Sonny? Okay, I'm going to move the talking stick to them. Look at this freaking mess here. I'm sure Chris is to blame. He denies it, which is that's what someone guilty would say.
Sonny.
yes.
Sonny,
Yes.
why don't you explain how this works with foreign languages?
Oh yeah, sure. So the open source model includes 13 languages. So if somebody goes and speaks the language, it can detect that. And that's the other thing about this. So right now, all the companies, they kind of have just a one trip to LLM. They have a script prompt, that's it. They use the same prompt no matter what you are or what you're trying to do. So what I realize is there's going to be a flow chain, of prompts, of apps and database, and you kind of go back and forth, you know what I mean? And one of the first prompts that I would ask is, what language are they speaking? If so, then I can reference one of the 13 languages supported, and then they'll be able to speak, and 11 Labs also does, native languages too. I've done Spanish as well. I speak a little bit of Spanish because I visit Colombia, twice a year. So, but yeah, it says up to 13 languages. And I think that's going to be really, really neat because you're going to get 13 other languages out the box without having to lift a finger. So.
Well, and if we roll back a little bit to when open source got big, that was what opened up basically India and Latin America for development, was open source models. And so what we're seeing now is these models being multilingual out of the box.
Yeah.
My company's mission is to democratize access to information technology and opportunity. Mm-hmm. Seems like the whole world's working on that right now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd say one quick comment. This is probably the biggest release in my opinion because you had Meta, Llama, you had Mistral, you had all these other ones. They all kind of had a whatever license. This is the fully open source license. You can use it for commercial nonprofit use right away. Apache nonprofit license. So
hell yeah.
So it's the most open source. And for reference, the 120 billion parameter is a little less than 175 billion parameter, which is what ChatGPT launched with. So what that means is that when ChatGPT launched, they had 175 billion parameter, and they broke the record of getting 1 million users in 5 days. This 120 billion parameter, I would argue, is within the fighting reach. This is the equivalent of the iPhone 4 coming out. Then they open source the original iPhone. It's kind of a crazy concept. It's very close. You know what I mean? So it's pretty exciting.
All right. Well, I had another question, I thought.
2 microphones. My question is, what kind of computing resources are required to run?
It's expensive right now. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm paying like $6 to $10 an hour. It will eventually get cheaper, but I think the investment is there. Like I mentioned before, I think this is like the first web server. You know, it was expensive back then, but you know, for the 120 billion parameters, so the LLM is going to be like the CPU. There's a lot of AI models, and you're just going to kind of hook them up. The other ones are very easy. You can even run some of them on CPU, but you really do need the GPUs. That's why NVIDIA is a large company, because they just isn't produced enough GPUs to drop the price yet. It's probably going to be another 5 years before it gets competitive. You know, like when in 2011, I used this app called Heroku, and it was basically like free apps. So anytime I had an idea, I could go build an app. I didn't have to pay for hosting. I could just go build it and really play with it. And for this, it's expensive, but I'm willing to put in the money because I think it's that useful to automate. As you can see, like this is 24/7, and it probably does a better job than I would as a salesman. You know, so.
Well, and one other thing, since we are talking about language models here, there's training the model and running the model. Training the model is very computationally expensive.
Yes.
Running the model is a lot less. And what we've seen more than anything else with these language models is, as they've been refining them, you've been able to get a lot more horsepower out of a much smaller compute. So like, for example, with video generation, I think it was when 2.2 came out relatively recently, you can do 10 seconds of video it takes it 90 seconds to render on a local machine that isn't like a supercomputer. So we're seeing what's strange is it's like, if you think about like a car's fuel economy, right? Car gets 30 miles a gallon. It's like in the course of 6 months, now the car gets 300 miles per gallon. And then like 3 months later, it gets 3,000 miles per gallon. It's like the laws of physics as we understand it with improvement. Like we're just at this really fun stage where things just keep getting better and better and better. Is that what you find, Sonny?
Yes, like I mentioned before, with the exception of the LLM, but this is like a really big moment, is the open source of these servers, models, because you don't really want to use the model as complete workhorse. So let me give you an example. If you want to make an email auto-replier, as you know, if you have a company, you get an email, it could go many different ways. It could be spam, it could be sales, it could be customer support. So it's not to the point, even ChatGPT, you can't say just reply, but what you can do is say, hey, which kind of email is this? Oh, it's a sales call. Okay, cool. All right, let's dig into that. What kind of questions do they have? You know what I mean? So you can chain certain things, and I think that's what was so interesting in my research, because obviously the rebuttal is like, well, why don't you use ChatGPT API? They obviously have a bigger model than this one. Ironically, this one's faster. But more importantly, I think 120 billion parameter is more than fine when you're an app developer that can really tightly integrate with the app. And I think just like, you know, there were people that went to companies to sign up companies with websites in 1994, 1995, 96. I think this is the same thing, but it's more exciting because there's more e-commerce now and people are willing to pay online as opposed to the 90s. So you can really come out with something fast and really useful, you know.
So raise your hand if you remember the Y2K bug. Okay, so the Y2K bug came because an engineer out there had a great idea. Said all these years keep starting with 19. 1992, 1993. Why don't we just ditch the 19 off? Now they did this in like the 80s. And then when Y2K came around, I bring this up because he's talking about a 120 billion parameter model, right? The whole premise of the Y2K bug was off of shaving 2 characters off of a database. Yeah. That's how limited the resources were. Mm-hmm. And we're swimming in these models. All right. Yeah. Any other questions for our good friend? All right. Talking sticks are coming your way. One's for YouTube, one's for here.
So this isn't actually a question, but as far as training the models and how expensive it is, if you go like AWS, you can get like $1,000 worth of free compute, and then even better, Azure, I have $50,000 that you can use within a year. You just join the entrepreneur, like the startup programs. Yeah. And you don't even need to be part of an accelerator or be venture backed. So just look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. All right, big round of applause for Sonny. He did a great job. All right, well, he's giving the talking sticks back. So one of the things that I love about Tech Alley, of course, is the presentation. We've got some pretty neat people talking about some cool things. And for some people, maybe it's not as cool or unique, but they're getting some experience out there. We like that. But the other thing I really love is it's actually community driven. So what we do at the end of the demo time here is it's just networking. So the last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do, you might be guessing it, it's going to be to clap. And a round of applause for everybody. It's a Saturday. You could be anywhere in the world. You're here. Thanks for coming out. My name's Josh Stacy. This was Demo Time. Have a good day.